They can't scared of him. He's a child abuse. Y'all want to know the truth? He done abused him when he there.
I left with so much blood, bro. It's blood on my son.
Something just hit the internet. And it's got people looking at NBA YoungBoy in a completely different light. We're not talking about music, charts, or success. This time, it's personal. Real personal. Multiple women connected to him, mothers of his children, have come forward with stories that don't just sound messy, they sound serious. We're talking about accusations, emotional breakdowns on live streams, and moments that people can't stop replaying. One clip mentions a child coming back hurt. Another claims fear inside a courtroom. And then there's a situation involving a custody exchange that allegedly turned physical, leaving people online asking the same question. What's really going on behind closed doors? Names like Arcola, Nia, and others are now all part of one growing conversation. Each one telling their side. Each one adding another layer. And while NBA YoungBoy has responded in his own way, a lot of people feel like the biggest questions still haven't been answered. So what's truth? What's exaggeration? And what's being left out? Because when multiple stories start lining up, people start paying attention. In this situation, it's only getting louder. Once that first clip started making rounds, it didn't take long before the internet locked in on one name, Arcola. She went live, and from the second she started talking, you could tell this wasn't about clout, this wasn't about entertainment. This felt personal, direct, like somebody who had been holding things in for a long time and finally decided to let it all out. She didn't ease into it either. Right away, she started calling out NBA YoungBoy and his wife, Jasmine Michelle. And the energy? It was tense from the jump. She accused Jasmine of moving strategically, playing her position quietly while securing her place. According to Arcola, this wasn't just about a relationship. She made it sound like there was calculation behind everything. Like moves were being made behind the scenes while everyone else was left dealing with the consequences. But then, the conversation shifted. And when it shifted to the kids, that's when things really started getting heavy. Arcola made it clear, whatever issues exist between adults should never spill over onto the children. She kept repeating that point, over and over. Kids are innocent. They don't pick sides. They don't choose the situation they're born into. And then she said something that instantly caught people's attention. She called NBA YoungBoy a deadbeat. Not like it was a new accusation either. The way she said it, it sounded like something she believed had been going on for a long time. Like this wasn't frustration from one situation. This was built-up resentment. But that wasn't even the moment that really shook people. It was what she said next. She started talking about her son. She claimed there was an injury, something involving his hand. At first, she said she was told it was a dog bite. That's the explanation she got when she reached out and asked what happened. But according to her, that explanation didn't sit right. She said the response came too quickly, like it was already prepared, and that alone made her question everything. So she did what a lot of parents would do. She looked closer. She said she examined the pictures, paid attention to the details, and the conclusion she came to, she didn't believe it was a dog bite at all. She claimed it looked like a burn. Now that right there, that's the kind of statement that immediately splits the internet. Because on one side, you've got people saying, wait, that's a serious accusation. And on the other side, you've got people asking, where's the proof? But Arcola didn't back down. She doubled down. She questioned why, if it really was a dog bite, there wasn't a clear follow-up. No mention of a doctor visit. No talk about treatment you'd normally expect in that situation. To her, those missing pieces meant something. And she made sure everybody listening understood that she wasn't convinced by the explanation she was given. Then she shifted again. This time, it wasn't just about one incident. She started painting a bigger picture. She talked about feeling like she's been handling things on her own, raising her child without consistent support. She said from day one, it's been her putting in the work. No backup, no steady presence, just her. And when she spoke on that, you could hear the frustration. Not just anger, but exhaustion. Because it wasn't just about showing up for pictures or moments that make it to social media. She was talking about the everyday responsibility. The parts nobody sees. Doctor visits, daily routines, actually being there. According to her, that's where things fall short. She even went further and claimed that it's not just her child experiencing that kind of treatment. She suggested that other kids connected to NBA YoungBoy might be going through similar situations. And once that idea got introduced, the conversation online got even louder. Because now, it wasn't being framed as a single disagreement. It was starting to sound like a pattern. Arcola also touched on the legal side of things. She brought up court, custody, and the expectation that if someone isn't going to be physically present, then financial responsibility should at least be consistent. Her argument was simple. It takes two people to create a child, so responsibility shouldn't fall on just one. And then she dropped something that added another layer to the story. She claimed that behind closed doors, things were said that didn't match the public narrative. According to her, there was a moment where NBA YoungBoy expressed happiness about their child, said he was glad the baby was kept. But publicly, she says the message was different. And that contradiction, that gap between private words and public statements, that's what she wanted people to notice. Because to her, it wasn't just about what's being said now. It was about what's been said all along. After that live ended, the conversation didn't slow down. It actually picked up speed. Clips started circulating everywhere. People were replaying certain parts, zooming in on details, debating every claim. And eventually, NBA YoungBoy responded. Not in a long explanation, not with a detailed breakdown, just a short message that people interpreted in different ways. Some felt like he dismissed the situation. Others felt like he was setting boundaries. But what really caught attention was the tone. Because instead of directly addressing the specific accusations, like the injury or the claims about involvement, he kept it broad. And for a lot of people watching, that wasn't enough. The backlash came quick. Social media started picking sides. Some defending him, others criticizing him. And then, just as fast as everything heated up, his accounts went quiet. Post gone. Activity wiped. Like everything just stopped. But by that point, it didn't matter. Because the conversation had already taken on a life of its own. And Arcola wasn't the only voice being heard anymore. Her story opened the door. And once that door was open, more people started stepping in. Different perspectives. Different experiences. But strangely, similar themes. And that's where things started to shift from one situation into something much bigger. Once Arcola's live started circulating, it didn't just stay about her situation. It opened the door for other voices, people who had been quiet, watching, waiting. And then one of the most serious moments came from someone a lot of people weren't expecting. Nia's side of the story didn't hit the internet in the same way. It didn't start with shouting or direct back and forth. It came through her mother, and the tone was completely different. This wasn't frustration. This sounded like concern. Real concern. When Nia's mother went live, she didn't waste time choosing her words carefully. She spoke the way people do when they feel like something needs to be said, no matter how it sounds. And what she described immediately shifted the weight of the conversation. She said her grandson was afraid. Not uncomfortable. Not shy. Afraid. And that right there changed how people were listening. Because now, this wasn't just about co-parenting issues or social media arguments. This was something deeper. Something that people take a lot more seriously. She described a moment in court. The first time she saw the child and NBA YoungBoy in that kind of setting together. And the way she explained it, the child didn't react like someone excited to see their father. She said he froze, like he didn't feel safe. Now again, these are claims. Personal accounts. But the way she told it made people pause. Because it wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic in delivery. It felt heavy. She went as far as making direct accusations, calling him abusive, saying that what she saw in that moment confirmed everything she had been worried about. And when someone speaks that directly, especially about a child, it immediately divides the audience. Some people started saying, "This is too serious to ignore." Others pushed back, saying, "There's no proof. This is one side." But either way, the conversation got louder. Then she added another situation. She talked about a late-night call. Said someone reached out around midnight telling them to come get the child. According to her, there had been a dangerous situation, something involving gunfire nearby. And she emphasized one thing. A child was present. That detail right there is what stuck with people. Because even outside of everything else, that introduces a whole different level of concern. Not about relationships, not about arguments, about environment, safety. She also spoke on something that might sound small at first, but the way she explained it made it hit differently. She said there was a point where communication stopped over something as minor as a watch. No calls, no check-ins, nothing. And she couldn't understand how something like that could lead to distance between a father and a young child. She described the day-to-day reality from her perspective. Said the child asks about his father constantly. Every day. And every day, they have to come up with an answer. Dad's working. That's what they tell him. Over and over again. And you could hear it, that frustration that builds when a situation doesn't change. But the questions keep coming. Then Nia herself spoke. And her tone was different from her mother's. Where her mother came in emotional and direct, Nia sounded more controlled. Like someone who had already processed a lot of this and wasn't trying to fight anymore. Just explain. She started by addressing the noise online. People assuming things. Turning posts into narratives. Creating drama out of moments that weren't meant to be public statements. She made it clear, not everything is what people think it is. Not every post is a shot. Not everything is about him. And that's something that often gets lost when situations like this go viral. The internet fills in gaps whether the information is there or not. But then she got into the part that mattered most to her. Her child. She said something simple, but it carried weight. If her son is okay where he is, then that's what matters. Not what people expect. Not what people want to see. Just his well-being. She pushed back on the constant question people were asking. Why isn't he with his father? And her response wasn't aggressive. It was tired, like she had answered it too many times already. She made it clear she's not forcing anything, not pushing a situation that doesn't feel right, and not creating instability just to meet expectations. Then she spoke on communication, and this part connected with a lot of people. She said it doesn't take much. A phone call, a check-in, just something. Because regardless of how two adults feel about each other, that shouldn't stop communication when it comes to a child. And she pointed something out that people don't always consider. It's hard to communicate when you're blocked. That line right there stuck. Because it challenges the common argument people make. The phone works both ways. She basically said, it doesn't if one side removes access completely. And again, whether people agreed or disagreed, it added another layer to the situation. Then she shifted focus completely. Instead of focusing on what's missing, she talked about what her son does have. Support, structure, people who show up. She mentioned names, people involved in the child's daily life. The ones putting in time, effort, consistency. And her message was clear. Her son isn't lacking love. He isn't sitting around waiting. He's growing up with people who are present. And in her eyes, that matters more than anything. Then she said something that kind of summarized her whole perspective. From what she sees, the involvement from NBA YoungBoy comes down to financial support, not emotional presence, not consistent communication, just that. And for her, that's not enough to define being a father. That statement alone sparked a whole new debate online. Because now people weren't just arguing about what happened. They were arguing about what counts. What makes someone present? Is it money? Time? Effort? Consistency? Different people had different answers. And while all of this was happening, while clips were spreading, opinions were forming, and sides were being chosen, something else became clear. These weren't isolated stories anymore. Different people, different situations, but overlapping themes. Distance, control, communication issues, and questions about responsibility. And just when it felt like everything had already reached a peak, another situation surfaced. And this one, it wasn't just emotional. It was physical, and it added a whole new level of intensity to everything that had already been said. The moment that next clip started circulating, the tone of the entire conversation shifted again. Up until now, most of what people had been hearing came from lives, emotional statements, and personal accounts. But this time, the claims being made crossed into something more physical, more direct, and a lot harder for people to ignore. This situation involved another mother connected to NBA YoungBoy, and what she described during a short but intense recording immediately sparked controversy online. She said she went to pick up her son. Just a normal custody exchange. At least that's how it should have been. But according to her, it didn't go that way at all. She claimed that when she arrived, things escalated quickly. There was tension already in the air, and before she even had the chance to fully process what was happening, the situation turned physical. She said someone hit her, right in front of her child. And that detail is what made this story explode online. Because regardless of who believes what, the idea of a child witnessing something like that immediately raises concern. She described leaving the situation injured, saying she was bleeding. And in one of the most talked about parts of her statement, she claimed that blood got on her son. That one line alone pushed the internet into overdrive. People started replaying it, breaking it down, questioning how a custody exchange could reach that level of violence. She didn't stop there. She said NBA YoungBoy was present during the situation. And according to her version of events, he didn't step in the way she expected him to. Instead, she felt like she was left to deal with it on her own. Afterward, she said the response she received wasn't about concern or resolution. It was about disrespect, at least from his perspective. She claimed the situation was reframed as her disrespecting him, rather than what she experienced physically. And that disconnect between perspectives is what kept fueling the online debate. Because now people weren't just looking at what happened. They were looking at how differently each side was describing it. She also brought up previous custody arrangements, saying they were constantly changing. What started as one schedule turned into another, and then another. According to her, there was no stable agreement. One moment it was weeks, then weekends, then something else entirely. And every adjustment, she said, made it harder to maintain consistency with her child. She tried suggesting alternatives, like a monthly rotation, but said even those proposals were rejected. From her perspective, it felt like she was constantly trying to compromise, while the structure kept shifting away from her. And in the middle of all that, she said she finally reached a breaking point. Because when she showed up that day, expecting a standard exchange, she ended up in a situation she described as violent and chaotic. That's when she made a decision. She said her child would not be going back into that environment. Not to him, not to anyone involved in that situation. And she was firm about it. Once she made that statement, she also addressed the financial side of things. She said she was told she would need to cover travel costs, around $1,300, to come get her own child. And to her, that felt overwhelming. Not just financially, but emotionally. Because in her mind, that added another barrier between her and her son. Another obstacle she had to overcome just to see him. And when you combine emotional stress, financial pressure, and custody conflict, it becomes more than just a disagreement. It becomes a system of ongoing tension. She also claimed that even after all of that, communication didn't improve. In fact, she said it stopped. Completely. No updates. No coordination. Nothing consistent. And again, whether people believed her or not, her version added to a growing pattern being discussed online. Multiple women. Multiple stories, different situations, but similar themes appearing again and again. Conflict, distance, breakdowns in communication, and frustration on all sides. Meanwhile, another voice entered the conversation, someone who took a different approach entirely. Star DeJane addressed the internet directly, but not in the same emotional or confrontational tone. Instead, she focused on something else. Perception. She spoke about how quickly the internet creates narratives around people they don't actually know. How people assume, judge, and build entire stories based on fragments of information. She made it clear she wasn't interested in being part of anyone else's storyline. She didn't want her life turned into content. She didn't want assumptions defining her reality. And she pushed back strongly on people questioning her financial situation, education, or motives. Her message was simple. She said she works. She takes care of her responsibilities. And she doesn't rely on public opinion to validate her life. That moment added another angle to the overall conversation. Because now, this wasn't just about conflict between co-parents. It was also about how these women were being perceived and discussed online, and whether or not the internet was shaping the narrative more than the actual people involved. Then came NBA YoungBoy's response. Short clips from his live surfaced, and his tone was very different from what others expected. He pushed back on the criticism. He said people were exaggerating. He questioned why he needed to constantly prove his involvement as a father. From his perspective, the presence of his children in his home was enough proof. He felt like he was being judged unfairly, and he wasn't interested in performing his personal life for the internet. But the issue wasn't just about presence. It was about consistency, and that's where the disagreement between both sides continued to grow. He also made comments about financial support and custody arrangements, suggesting that some situations were being misrepresented or taken out of context. And while he didn't directly address every accusation in detail, his response added more fuel to an already heated conversation. Because now both sides had spoken, but neither side fully agreed on the reality being described. And that left the internet doing what it always does: debating, analyzing, choosing sides. As more clips resurfaced, older claims got re-examined, new opinions formed, and every detail, no matter how small, became part of a much larger discussion about fatherhood, responsibility, and accountability. And through all of it, one thing became clear. This wasn't just one incident. It wasn't just one argument. It wasn't just one live stream. It was a cycle of stories, emotions, and conflicting perspectives all colliding at once. And by the time everything settled, even slightly, the conversation had already moved beyond a single situation. It had become a pattern people felt they were watching unfold in real time. And the question now wasn't just what happened in each clip. It was whether anything was actually changing. And at the end of all of this, one thing is clear: the internet is only seeing fragments, not the full picture. Every clip tells a different version. Every live stream adds another layer. And every response from NBA YoungBoy keeps the conversation going without really settling it. But the real question people are left with is simple. Is this just online noise that keeps getting amplified? Or is there a deeper pattern that people are finally starting to notice? Because when multiple voices start saying similar things and emotions keep running this high, it stops being just entertainment for a lot of viewers. It becomes something they feel needs answers. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think this is just social media drama being blown out of proportion? Or do you think there's more going on behind the scenes that people don't fully understand? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more breakdowns like this, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next update. Because this story isn't over yet, and when it moves again, you'll want to see what happens next.